everyone, my name is Sean Biltoft. I'm the chef here at AJ's Bistro, and today I want to show you guys how to do a 10-pin snake eye stout braised beef short rib. We'll start with a little bit of oil in a pan, and we will simply start a nice slow and low sear on the meat side of these short ribs. And you can see here that we have the bone on one side covered by a fat cap, and then we have another side that is all meat covered by a little bit of silver skin and another fat cap. Don't worry about the silver skin. We're going to braise this thing slow and low, and we're going to get rid of all the connective tissue and everything that makes this thing tough. And by the time that we are done, this will fall off the bone. Nice hot pan, nice hot oil. So this is going to take about 5 minutes. We're going to do about 1.5 minutes, almost 2 minutes on each side. Get a sear on all 4 sides, which is actually longer than 5 minutes, so my math is terrible. But we're going to get a sear on all 4 sides. Pull the short ribs out. We're going to add our aromatics. We do mirepoix here, which is carrot, celery, and onion. I like to add a little bit of garlic to that and a little bit of shallot as well. And once we get these things nice and cooked down, we will finish it off with some aromatic herbs, and then we will deglaze the pan with a little bit of Worcestershire, a little bit of our house roasted vegetable stock, and then of course the star of the show, the 10-pin snake eye stout. Okay, so as you guys can see here, we're doing a nice slow sear on the sides of these short ribs here. Okay, and you can see that fat that we had, the connective tissue is starting to render out. It's getting a little crunchy, as I like to say. Okay, we're going to continue turning these, and like I said, we're going to sear all 4 sides. Now I transferred this over to my grill. You guys can simply just turn your burners down at home, however you like to do it. Just get a little bit lower of a heat, just to get more of a rendering out of the fat process, a little bit more flavor. And what we're going to do is, you can see here in the bottom of this pan, you're starting to get some caramelization. We call that a fond. And once we're all finished with the mirepoix and everything else that goes into that pan, we're going to use our Worcestershire, an acid-based liquid, to help lift up that fond and reincorporate all that flavor back into the dish. We have seared just about every side. Now certain braises, if I'm doing red wine, if I'm doing, like a darker stock, something that's not going to hide the flavor of the beer that we're doing, I'd get a lot harder sear on here. But I don't want to affect the color of the sauce, the finished product, anything like that. So I'm just going to get a nice golden brown sear on all sides. Like you can see, that fond on the bottom of the pan is growing. Okay, we're simply going to pull these out, place them on our sheet pan to rest for a little bit, and then we're going to start adding our aromatics, the things that affect your olfactory. 90% of the things that you taste are actually the things that you can smell. So here we go with our aromatics. Now we're going to let those aromatics go just like the short ribs, slow and low. We're going to pull as many sugars out of the carrots as we possibly can. We're going to pull as many sugar out of the as much sugar out of the onions as we possibly can. We're going to let that garlic kind of melt. We'll get the aromatics. Once you start to smell, we're ready for our next step. We're going to let our aromatics, just like the short rib, go nice and slow and low. We're going to pull as many sugars out of those carrots and onions as we possibly can. Let that garlic kind of melt into a nice little fragrant paste. And then we're going to pull all that fond up, like I was talking about, with our acid. All right, so you guys can see my carrots are soft. My onions are starting to get a little bit of caramelization to them. Now I'm going to add the olfactory essentials. Okay, so I've got my herbs in there, letting them get aromatic, nice and fragrant. As soon as I start to smell those, I don't want to overcook them. I will then cook out my essential oils. You won't taste them in the finished product of the dish. Okay, as soon as I start to smell those aromatics, we're going to deglaze. Like I said, lift that caramelized fond you have on the bottom of the pan with a little bit of Worcestershire. Okay, it doesn't take very long. I will then use a scraping device, kind of help pull the rest of that stuff up into the dish. Okay. That's about all that takes. Okay. Then for a little bit more aromatics, our house roasted vegetable stock. You can also buy that over at the butcher block if you need. Or you can take some of your vegetable scraps from home, add them to water, boil them, or roast them in the oven, then add them to water and boil them. The longer you roast them, the darker your stock's going to be and the more fragrant it's going to be. Okay, so we're going to do our vegetable stock here. And then I'm going to match that about 4 to 1 with our 10-pin snake eye stout. Now, when I am doing a braise, I don't find measurements necessary. If you really want to, it should be about 3 cups. Braising's all about the love. It's not about the measurements. Okay? You can impress anybody with a ribeye, you can impress anybody with a New York. That's because that is naturally perfect. Anything that you're doing with a braise, it all takes love, it all takes care, and it all takes a little bit of knowledge. That's it. So once this comes to a boil, we will then add our short ribs back to the pan. We will cover it. We will throw that into the oven, and that goes about 2.5 hours until that meat just falls off the bone. All right, sauce is just about to a boil. Like I said, you can see here we have our aromatics, we have our caramelized vegetables, we have our Worcestershire, our 10-pin beer, and a little bit of vegetable stock. Super easy. Like I said, every one of these things can be bought next door at the butcher block. Vegetable stock can be made yourself if so desired. If you're ever cutting mirepoix into beef, all the onion peels, all the carrot peels, all the celery, butt ends, all that stuff can be roasted in the oven and turned into a vegetable stock pretty easily. So, okay, we're going to add our short ribs back to the pan. And then we are going to pop that right into the oven. And luckily, I have one ready to go. So in about 2.5 hours, I'll check that with my meat fork. Make sure that it pulls right off the bone. If it does, perfect, we're done. If it does not, I'll give it another 15 minutes on a timer. Check it again, 15 minutes after that until it falls off the bone, and then it's done. So now, I'll show you guys how we plate this. Pretty simple. A little bit of roasted carrot puree. I added a little bit of buttermilk, some heavy cream to help with the consistency. Left it as thick as I possibly could so that I could, you know, bend it to my desires. Okay, a little carrot puree, a little swipe. Get some nice, delicious, golden brown fried potatoes right on top there. Beautiful. Make yourself a little bed on those potatoes because we need a place for our short rib to sleep. Right there on top. Ooh. And then I reserved some of the braising liquid. This is the beer, Worcestershire, and vegetable stock braising liquid. We're going to cool that right around the outside of the plate here. And then I like to add, this is a very rich dish. You have very creamy carrot puree, you have heavy fried potatoes, you have a braised short rib full of fat, full of love. We need a little bit of something to cut that. I like a little something fresh. These are the Well-Grown Farms micro radish. They call them the Night of Spice, here local in Spokane. Pop that right on top. Gives you a little bit of edge, a little bitter, a little crunch. Well, everything that you need. And then our house pickled red onions, also sold next door at the butcher block. Okay, and I just like to place those here and there. Gives a little color, a little texture, and it just kind of shows that love that you put into it. And that right there is AJ's Bistro 10-pin snake eye stout braised beef short rib.